Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to share my materials that I typically use on an everyday basis. You guys have been asking about them in the past, so I thought it's time to do a video. First up, we're going to start with watercolor paper. This is the Canson XL watercolor paper. It's really inexpensive and cheap, and I love using it for nonsense paintings. And what I mean by that is I like to use it for testing out colors, color mixes, and maybe some brush strokes. Really anything goes. You can find the paper in sheets or spiral bound. I love the idea of having a spiral bound because you can travel with it quite easily, and it's it's all attached to one thing. So you can rip the papers out. They do have an area where you can detach the papers, which is quite lovely. Now, if you're not painting landscapes and you're painting other subjects, then I do think this is a beautiful paper to work on, even though, yes, it is inexpensive and cheap. But if you look at these color swatches, I think they look beautiful. You do have to work a bit fast, because if you don't work fast enough, then you will get these hard lines, which you may not want. But if you work quite fast, then you can get some really beautiful blends, like you see here. All right, next up is my absolute favorite paper. I love this paper. It's the #1 paper, hands down. I'm always going to use it. I don't believe I'll ever not use it. And it's the Arch, or Arches, however you want to say it, watercolor, 100% cold press watercolor paper. You can get it in block form or you can get it in sheet form. And there's so many different sizes to choose from. You can see the texture in this paper. It's excellent at holding water and paint and making things flow. The downside of this paper is that it does take forever to dry. I love this size for YouTube videos, but it is pretty impossible to find it in the US. So I did buy this when I was in France a couple of months ago, and I believe I can find it at Jackson's Art Supply online. And here's a couple of color swatches on Arch paper versus the Canson watercolor paper. And you can see it's just different. And if you are new here or enjoying my videos and you haven't already, please like and subscribe. And of course, leave a comment below. Here's some handmade watercolor paper. Handmade watercolor paper I've been using for a while. I don't have any particular brands that I like. I just found some of these online. I believe they're made in India. And this one is quite thick compared to the one on the left, which is quite thin. The downside that I have found with handmade watercolor paper is that it absorbs the paint almost too much, to where you have to continue to layer it to get that vibrancy back up. But otherwise, it's beautiful. I think I can blend really well. It's easy to use, and I just have a lot of fun with handmade watercolor paper, especially with non-landscape. So I've done some botanicals over the years just for fun. I really enjoy painting leaves. I find it quite therapeutic. Though don't ask me to paint flowers, because if you want that, you might as well learn from a 5-year-old who has no painting experience, because I am not so good at florals. Trust me, it's not something I can do. But you can see the blend here. I love it. I think it works really, really well. And of course, who doesn't love a deckled edge? And I believe you can get some of these handmade papers that are tinted, creating quite a vintage feel. I fell in love with this botanical that I found on Pinterest that another artist did, so I thought I would test it out using some deep light watercolors, and it was a lot of fun. Next up are my paints that I use. And the first paints that I've ever used that were professional were by Daniel Smith, and to this day, I still have them as my go-to. They have so many colors to choose from, so many greens, and you know I love green, I want them all. But I really love my Daniel Smith watercolor paints. New to me are the Holbein watercolors and I have been slowly really enjoying them and growing to love them, especially the gray of gray. And of course, the deep, deep light watercolors, I have talked about them in my videos. They are fabulous handmade watercolors. Now, they're based in Latvia, and yes, they are expensive. These are not cheap by any means. I do have a discount code, Deep Deep Jackie, to get 10% off. It's not much, but it's something. But if you can splurge and get your hand on a couple of these, I cannot recommend them enough. They are so, so beautiful. Yes, I am a brand ambassador for Deep Deep Light, but this is honestly my genuine opinion. I mean, look at these colors. I cannot get enough of them. They are gorgeous. Let me know in the comments below, have you tried Deep Deep Light? And of course, in almost all of my videos, I have the Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. I love using this for snow effects, water effects. You can drop it in wet paint and have it move around and form like water crystals. It's gorgeous. You can also use white gouache. That totally works too. Now, moving on to my palettes. This is a very large like metal palette, and it stores a ton of my greens. It's not practical for traveling. You can see here the different sizes from my everyday palette, this plastic one that I feel like most people have, compared to that really big one. And this one is sentimental to me because it's the very first palette I ever had, and I still use it to this day. And there's no organization in the colors at all. It's just really a hot mess, and I like it that way. If I am painting really large, then I like to use this enamel tray or pan or whatever you want to call it. It's pretty large, as you can see. And I just place the colors that I like to use in different areas of it. Now, the colors typically go together, so if they intermix, it's totally fine. But if I don't want my colors mixing, then what I always go for are these stackable bowls. They store easily. I put the pigments that I want in them, and I can have a very clean color without any other mix getting into it by doing it this way. I'll leave a link in the description below. You don't need this specific stackable bowl. Really, anything will do. There's even smaller ones like these ones here. And typically I use this for mixing some colors and not necessarily for adding paint in them to live permanently. Next up is a brand by Art Toolkit. They are a small company based in Washington, and I cannot even begin to tell you how in love I am with the brand. Wow. So I was on the hunt for a portable plein air travel palette, and I came across Art Toolkit, and ever since I feel like everyone has known about them except me. I don't know, I've been under a rock. But I reached out to them and asked if they would be willing to send me a couple palettes, and they said yes. I could not believe it. I was very, very grateful. So they sent me this pocket palette with assorted pans. This is the mixing pan with the white under there. You have mini pans, which are the tiniest ones, and you have standard pans, which are the longer ones, and then the double pans, which are the square. And that backing is magnetic, and that blew me away. I thought that was such a genius move and loved that so much. So this is the pocket palette, so it's quite small. They have a smaller one, I believe, called the Demi palette. And then the other palette that they sent me that I asked for was the Folio palette, the bigger one with the assorted pans. So I'm so grateful and so excited that they were generous and sent me this. So thank you, Art Toolkit. If you ever watched this video, I deeply appreciate it. They also gave you all a 10% discount code on their products. You can use the code JackieArt10, so JackieArt10 to get 10% off your order. Now, this code only lasts until February 14th, 2025. But either way, you can have all my money because I just love this. And I'm not kidding when I said that I love it so much, because I purchased I purchased my first pocket palette and folio palette with the pans that I specifically wanted to go in them as far as arranging them. So, and then I also bought their A5 art holder that you can put supplies in. And yeah, I'm very excited to use it. I don't have any paints in here yet because I'm trying to figure out what I want to put in here. I think that's going to be another video as far as a future video when it comes to my travel painting. I want to get a bit more outside. I haven't gotten on my mountain bike in a couple years, and I used to love mountain biking. And what better way to do a mountain bike ride and have some painting supplies when you're resting. So that is a plan of mine. I'm very, very excited and looking forward to it. And you can just see it fits right in there. It's very small, the sizes. And if you want to learn more about Art Toolkit, they have a YouTube channel where you can learn all about their supplies. And even Mind of Watercolor did an interview with Maria, who's the founder of Art Toolkit, and her story just sold me. So it wasn't even just the supplies, it was the story, it was the adventure, and just these people just love nature and the environment, and I loved it. If you can't afford or don't want to spend your money on another palette, then of course reusing anything that you have. So here I have a little tin that used to store mints, and I put my deep, deep light watercolors in them. I can't fit my deep, deep light watercolors in that tin, so if I want to bring those with me, I have to put them in something else, and this is quite small and lightweight. And now we're going to go over my watercolor brushes. These are brushes that I always use for my landscapes. I do paint leaves, but I have different brushes that I use for that. With my landscape brushes, they get really messed up and frayed, and I don't want to have to worry about damaging them. So these are the ones that I always use for my landscapes. I have a 1.5 inch and a 2 inch Neptune and Aqua Elite. I love them both. The Neptune is, it holds a bit more water and it's a bit flimsier, while the Aqua Elite brushes are a bit stiffer. Now, these Neptune brushes, if you've been around a while, you've seen that I use them a lot, and I love using them for lifting, of course, for applying washes, but really that 3/4 inch brush is a favorite of mine when it comes to lifting out paint. So you can use it for lifting tree trunks and trees like you see here, or you can go ahead and remove paint to create water reflection effects in your painting. Now, I love the Aqua Elite quill and the long round. Specifically the long round, if I had to choose, the 12 long round is my most used watercolor landscape brush, especially when it comes to painting on a bigger scale. As you can see, those bristles are a bit destroyed. The other brushes I use every day without fail are my long rounds 2 and a 4, and that's by Velvet Touch. When it comes to getting different effects like splatter effects, I love the Deerfoot brushes, but I'll be honest, I would love to find one that is fully synthetic. This is a mix of animal hair and synthetic fibers, but I would like to have a fully synthetic one. Now, when it comes to details, I love using the gravy brushes. You can purchase the smaller brushes from any of the series by Princeton, but it's so much cheaper, and these are just as wonderful, and you get a set of 11 of them. You don't have to have gravy brushes. There are many different detail brushes out there, but I love how fine of a point these brushes are. So those are my landscape brushes. And now we're going to move on to the brushes that I use for botanicals, at least specifically leaves or any other random subject I like to paint that's not a sweeping landscape. And that is also by Princeton, and it's the Heritage series. I really enjoy these. It doesn't matter the size, though the number 10 is my favorite. As you can see, the number 10 is pretty worn down. But what I love about these is that they're a bit stiffer and they have a nice fine point. And I try to keep these bristles as beautifully smooth as possible. I believe the Velvet Touch rounds, not long rounds, but the rounds might be quite similar to the Heritage. These are new to me. I've been painting with them for about 2 months now, or a month and a half, and it's the Escoda brushes, and they are the travel brushes. They're fully synthetic leather, synthetic bristles, which is really important to me personally. They do have animal hair ones, and wow, those are expensive. But if you want synthetic brushes, these are so amazing. I cannot stop gushing about these brushes. They are expensive if you buy them in the set, but I have seen that you can buy them individually. And they have 6 brushes in the set. As you can see, the sizes here, 2 all the way up to size 12. But what I love about these brushes is not only are they travel friendly and portable, but they have a nice big belly, but a very, very, very fine pointy tip. So you can really get in some sharp details and some very fine lines. And that to me is huge because I love that. So I shared this video on Instagram, and lots of you had asked what type of brushes these were, so here they are. And then even the biggest brush, which is a size 12, has a very sharp, fine tip. And I just love that in a watercolor brush. Now up next are my water bottles. Water bottles are not created equal. They all give a different spray, and you can use them for different effects. So really, I highly recommend getting multiple different types of water bottles. The largest water bottle, the turquoise one, I use mainly for wetting my palette and or for wetting my paper. The other one is a fine mist, and this one is a continuous misting spray, so you can really get a different effect. And these other two give 2 different small amounts of spray, and I typically use these for when I'm painting trees or mountains or want to get texture in my foreground. Next up are my watercolor jars. Now this is my biggest watercolor jar, and I usually save this for when I'm painting large, but honestly I need a bigger one. I need a wider one. This is my everyday watercolor jar. Don't really have a preference on jars, but people are curious. These are the collapsible cups that most artists I think have. A lot of them use it for traveling. I have not really used them for traveling. I typically when I travel, or if I go to a coffee shop, which I typically do every Sunday with another friend who is also an artist and we just paint for fun, I typically bring this jar because it has a sealable lid. Now, if I was going to get on my mountain bike or go in the backcountry, I would definitely not bring this because it'd be way too heavy, and who wants to bring glass? But it works. So when it comes to boards, I like to have a surface to put my paper on so I can tilt my paper, move it up and down, and really have some versatility. I like the acrylic board mainly for my YouTube videos because I think it's aesthetically pleasing, and I love to wet the actual board itself and the back of my paper to seal the paper on. It's a great technique to keep your paper flat without using a block or tape. The other one is wood. I typically save this for my personal paintings because it's not as aesthetically pleasing for YouTube video. I mean, really, it doesn't matter. I just apparently have OCD and I want things to be very aesthetically pleasing, mainly for when I'm editing these videos. The downside of the wood, though, is it does warps. Forewarning. If you buy the 16 by 20 Arch watercolor block, it gives you the option of having these little stools, or I'm not sure what they're actually called. I could find out, but that would be too much work. But it can help lift your paper up, so when you have the paint can flow down nicely, and it comes in a set of 4. So you can stack it quite high, and that's going to have that paint come down. Of course, you can always use some form of an easel, but if you don't have an easel and you're already buying the paper, why not include this? So Yeah, I love them. Other supplies that I don't use as often, but I still reach for, are some tape. You can get artist tape, you can get painter's tape. I mostly use painter's tape. I haven't had any issues with it, especially on quality paper. I also use a sponge. I mainly use sponges for creating texture in my watercolor foregrounds. There's also a palette knife. You can get some fun details around rocks or water to get that very glistening crystal effect. And of course, any pencil for me will do, but I love my kneaded eraser if you want to be really gentle on your paper and even environmentally friendly so you're not having those little bits of eraser fall everywhere. This is perfect. And my palette knife. I typically always use my palette knife in my videos to create rocks. It's my number one favorite thing when it comes to using a palette knife is to create rocks in my landscape. You might call it cheating, but for me, it's not cheating, it's just using another tool, and I really love it. And of course, masking fluid. This is the only masking fluid that I use. I don't use it as often, but if I'm going to use it, that's what I go for. And my heat tool, I use this in my videos occasionally, but I'm honestly thinking about getting a big hair dryer, especially for my larger paintings, because this one is a bit too small. And this item is new to me. I usually typically use paper towels or some microfiber cloths, but I've been wanting a sponge for traveling to keep it in a plastic tray and just to be a bit more environmentally friendly. And you can see how that water just disappeared. So the sponge really soaks it up. So it's been quite nice. So those were my supplies that I use on an almost everyday regular basis, and a few of them that are new to me that I already know I'm going to use on a regular. I am so excited that you joined me today, and I hope that you found something that was useful and that you may want to incorporate in your own painting as well. But if you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. And until next time, my friends, take care and happy painting.